The following program is presented to you by the Hope Channel Network.
When you think about racing and NASCAR and hot tracks, you've got to think about the Earnhardt name. Well, we've got an Earnhardt with us today. You'll want to stay with us here on Between the Lines. Welcome to Between the Lines. I'm your host, Samuel Thomas Jr. Today we're going to take a ride down to Victory Lane, as they would call it in NASCAR jargon. We have a very special guest with us, one who's got a book about his life that actually chronicles a life of racing. It's actually a family of racing, the Earnhardt family. And I'm excited. How about you, Heather?
I've been excited about this all day.
I have.
Cars, NASCAR, this is just so manly. It's just like the best
haven't
topic.
you seen the joy just jumping out of my face?
No, it's like a kid in a candy store.
I know.
Let's talk about fast cars.
Well,
so let's talk about fast cars. All right.
John, welcome to our show. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tell us about the Earnhardt history of racing in the family.
Well, racing all started many years ago, back in the late 40s and 50s. And it actually started, a lot of people don't know this, but it actually started by bootleggers being chased by the police. And after a while, you know, they're being chased by the police. They get out here in these fields and they're going around and around and the police are following them. And finally they said, well, why doesn't someone come up with a way of racing cars and make money doing it?
That's interesting.
So it's
They were
kind of
running
interesting.
from the law.
Amazing, isn't it? And my parents, see, I was born in the back of a tavern. My parents were bootleggers. And so we were chased many times by the police as a little kid growing up. And so after so many years into bootlegging, my parents decided, hey, let's build a racetrack. And so we built a racetrack right behind our house. And
where was this? I mean, was this?
This was back in the early 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, 1952.
In the Carolinas?
In the Carolinas, a little place called Gold Hill, an old country town. And
is that North Carolina?
North Carolina, correct.
Okay.
And so we built this track, and every Sunday people came from all around to watch these cars race. They were called micro-midget race cars at the time. Ralph Earnhardt, Dale Sr.'s father, would come and work on the cars, and some of the family would race with us there. And so this was a Sunday thing, and this lasted until the early 60s. See, NASCAR would not race on Sundays back in the 50s, but the early 60s they finally decided, well, let's start racing on Sunday. And so when they started racing on Sunday, the micro-midget race cars just kind of phased out, and that was the end of them because everybody went into the big cars, racing at the beach at Daytona and other places across the country on Sundays.
So the Earnhardts were one of the first families in racing.
Well, I don't know. Probably so. I mean, they had their part in it. You know, Ralph Earnhardt, which is Dale's father, he raced, and people like Junior Johnson, who he boasted the fact that he was a bootlegger back in those days when he started racing. And they even got a little museum in Mooresville, North Carolina, where Junior has his liquor still right there in the museum. So he kind of boasts of that fact, that that's how racing all started.
You mentioned Dale. Now, what is your relationship to Dale?
Well, Dale and I grew up together. He, as a child, we were 1 year apart in age. And we stood around the racetracks and watched the cars go round and round. Our relationship, I'm not sure about. Some people think we're brothers, some say we're cousins, some say this and that. But we really never knew our real relationship as we were growing up, because my dad wasn't the type to really go to family reunions and so forth. And so I really don't know the relationship. But they say we looked a lot alike. And one of the things that I do that is kind of impersonate Dale Earnhardt is, if you don't mind me doing this, it's just a quick
Sure.
thing. When I do this, and this is the Earnhardt smile, okay?
Okay.
I want to, you know. So I do that for people often to let them see that
Right.
there is some relationship.
There's some
there.
connection for sure.
Right. This past weekend we had a show at our church in Columbia, South Carolina. And when I say show, it was kind of a motorcycle rally, and we invited people from all over. And a man from Florida drove all the way up to Columbia, South Carolina. He is a Dale Earnhardt look-alike. And so the two of us together, they thought we were brothers, you know, when we got together. But he really looks like Dale more than I do. And so he goes to the racetracks and does this thing about looking like Dale.
But you and Dale are actually from the same part. I mean, you were from the same community, so the relationship is probable, no question.
That's correct. And he was, like I say, 1 year younger than me, and Dale quit school in the 9th grade. I was kicked out in the 10th grade.
Okay, now there's a little bit of a difference here, John. Wait a minute. He quit and you were kicked out.
That's a story.
Yeah,
we should explore that.
I don't know if we want to go down that road.
So you were trouble as a kid?
I was a troubled kid, yeah. I got into all kind of trouble. And both of us wanted to race. He had his car, I had my car. We'd drive down those streets where we lived and race sometimes. But the Lord had another place for me. Dale went off into racing full time, and as the Lord led in my life, I got married, had a couple children, and the Lord touched my life one day, and I became a Christian, and so we went directly into ministry, started working for the Lord at that time.
How old were you when you came to know Christ?
I was around 20 years of age, yeah.
And what type of encounter did you have that gripped your heart and turned you around?
What happened was, you know, my wife was trying to save our marriage. We had a child, and then we had another one on the way, and she was trying to save our marriage and didn't know what to do to save it. And she found some verses in the Bible about the body being the temple of God and how Jesus died for us. And one night after one day I was with my buddies partying, and I came home that night, and a cigarette in one hand, a beer can in the other. My wife said, "I want to read something to you from the Bible." And I said, "I don't want to hear that stuff." Well, now, she wasn't a Christian, but she was just trying to save our marriage. And she read there about how Jesus paid the price for us and died for me. And that night I went outside, looked up into the starry heavens, and I said, "Lord, if you're real, set me free, give me victory." And I was working at a casket company at the time, building caskets, getting people ready for the grave. Now I'll bring them alive. But when I went to work that next morning, I got out of my car, 55 Chevrolet, 2-door hardtop, well, I'll talk about that another time. But I got out of my car, and I said, "Lord, set me free, give me victory." And so that night when I got home from work, I went in, I didn't go out with the buddies that day, and told my wife, I said, "The Lord's changing my life. We're going to go to church this coming Sunday." And so we did. The two of us, we became very active in the Methodist church, because that was the church.
And that's what I want to pick up with after we take this break. We're
Okay.
going to talk about your journey, because that's what's exciting, because most people think that accepting Christ is just immediate change, but there's a journey. Stay with us. We've got John Earnhardt. You're watching Between the Lines.
For more information about any of the books presented today on Between the Lines, visit your local Adventist Book Center or go online at www.adventistbookcenter.com. If you are interested in receiving a copy of today's book and live in the United States and Canada, call 1-800-765-6955. That's 1-800-765-6955.